Greetings and welcome back to Tales of Faith, a podcast on the Narrative Lectionary. I'm Louise Ochart, and my pronouns are she, her.
And I'm AJ Ochart. My pronouns are he, him. This is episode 401 for the 13th Sunday after Pentecost on September 7th, 2025. Though we're recording on whatever date this is. I didn't look it up.
It's the 4th of August.
4th of August. Great.
2025.
So, if something major has happened in the world, we're obviously not going to address it in between when we record and when this comes out.
So today we're talking about Genesis. We're in Genesis 1, chapter 1, 1 to chapter 2, verse 4a. We're using the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition, and unless otherwise noted. All right, so let's get started with some context.
All right. So overall context, this is one of the creation narratives in the book of Genesis. So this is probably actually one of the newest ones. We have there's like some textual remnants of probably a very, very old or a couple of very, very old creation narratives. Things like references to Behemoth and how God, makes Behemoth skip and dance like a child or something like that. Probably are some remnants of an older creation story. The one that we're used to of Adam and Eve that goes into the temptation, Garden of Eden, all of that sort of stuff was probably written before this one. And this one was most likely written by what we call the priestly source. There are some things that we'll see here that it's that sort of thinking of, for instance, separating animals by whether they're clean or unclean type thing. That suggests that that's probably what it is. And most likely it seems that it sort of was put first when all of these different things were all being put together in the Second Temple period. And they put theirs first, right? This is the first one you read. So that's kind of the overall context for this. The book of Genesis is, as we say lots of times, right? That literally means beginning. And ultimately what this section is trying to do is provide a context for everything that's coming afterwards, right? And especially this section, Genesis 1 to 11, is really sort of a prehistory. You have creation narratives, you have kind of why the world is the way it is. Why are there men and women? Why are there animals? Why do we have this sense that we should be sort of connected to God and yet we're not? Why is it that we hate those freaking snakes? Why is it that people do evil to each other? It's explaining things that everybody knows happened, like creation. Obviously, we're here, so therefore there must have been some sort of creation. We're pretty sure there was a huge, gigantic flood. How do we tell that story? That sort of stuff. Why is it that there are different cultures? Why is it that some of them are cool and some of them really are not? It's that sort of stuff. So that's part of what this the context overall of this section is. And there's not really a last time on Tales of Faith because this is the beginning of this one. So we'll be pointing towards where we go kind of next. But as far as last time, we're starting the beginning. There's no last time.
Yeah, last time was just us saying what we're going to be doing this year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we'll go on to the text and text me. Why don't you start? Because I just talked.
All right, so this is the first section, Genesis 1 1 to 5. Once upon a time, when God began to create the heavens and the earth was complete chaos, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day.
Great. So the first thing to talk about is, so again, we're reading from the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition, and you might notice at the very beginning something sounds a little bit different to the way that most of us have grown up with. It's when God began to create the heavens and the earth, as opposed to in the beginning when God created the heavens and the earth. So that's a very intentional translational choice, which is actually much more close to what is sort of intended. It's the beginning, and I don't remember the Hebrew off the top of my head, but it's a common way to begin a story. So like called this section, once upon a time. It's almost that type of thing. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. This is the sort of, I am beginning to tell you a story. Now, over the years, it sort of started getting translated, and especially in English, in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth as a sort of tied up in this sort of idea of God creating ex nihilo out of nothing, which can kind of be seen here, but it's not really. But the sort of idea of at the beginning of everything, God created, which is a bit of an overstatement of what is actually being said, is where here is like God is fixing to create something.
Mm-hmm.
So when God began doing that thing, this is what happened. So just an interesting, more scholarly, critical translations are tending now towards this when God began to create the heavens and the earth, as a recognition that that's actually the intention, more about the intention than it is the in the beginning of sort of all existence. This is what happened. Thoughts, comments?
Not really. I mean, just that, we're going to get this repetitive, and God saw that it was good.
Yeah.
And just sort of the poetic nature of this section of verses.
And we will see that, especially this one is very poetic. And arguably all of these creation narratives are apocalyptic, in that they use sort of imagery. It's intended to be a revelation, a revealing of truth of, hey, this is how God has created everything. So yeah, there's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of sort of yeah, repeated phrases and sort of grouping things that we'll talk a little bit about a little bit later.
The phrase complete chaos just also kind of jumped out at me, because I'm trying to think, I mean, I can't remember what it was before, but that's definitely a new.
Yeah, so that's a slightly different take. So the I do seem to remember, if I'm remembering correctly, the Hebrew is tohu vavohu, um, which is using the image of, and what's really interesting here is it was the sort of uh, waterless places.
Mm-hmm.
Desert is kind of wilderness is the metaphor that's being used here. That it is it,
Oh, that's
it
interesting.
lacks form, right?
Right.
And so part of this is in an ancient mindset, there are things that you build, and then there's sort of like chaos and wilderness. You go and, I want to plant a field. So I'm going to take this field in from its natural state, its chaotic state, unordered state, and I'm going to remove the rocks, and I'm going to, make it so that I'm going to make something out of it. Right? So
Yeah.
that's sort of it's kind of what we would call chaos and order is the dichotomy. Um which is different to, again, as we're sort of a later sort of theological statement was that this is from nothing God creates something.
Right. And this is
And for an ancient person, the idea of nothing, like that is a concept that is just way too abstract.
right.
Um, and so the imagery that is being used here is sort of, yeah, chaos and order more than it is something. So there's nothing there because it's just like you go out in the middle of the forest or in the middle of the desert. There's nothing there.
Right.
Like, is there matter there?
There's no
Yes, there's
structure.
stuff. Yeah, but there's no
Yeah.
structure to it. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And what I'm finding even more interesting now hearing that is that
Mhm.
the first thing that's created is light.
Yeah.
And that's the because light could have easily been the last thing created too.
Mm,
Like
okay.
it doesn't it's interesting that God chose to create light first,
Yeah.
to bring illumination first
To this
to this thing, to this
chaotic stuff.
formless, to
Yeah.
to the chaos, to illuminate the chaos, and then to fix fix is probably not the right word,
Right.
but then to
To
order
give
the
it order.
chaos. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Then to recede the waters, and then to um, that in order to do that, he had to see it clearly first, um,
yeah.
and to and and then we hearken to the Jesus being the light of the world, and like just that whole tie-in there.
Yeah, the sort
The
of
light
light
is the beginning. Yeah.
darkness is another dichotomy that's being used
Yeah.
here. Yeah, very much so. Um, with this chaos, we also, so what's really interesting here is you have um, this tohu vavohu, this waterless places, and then the very next metaphor that's used is that darkness covered the face of the deep.
Yeah, that's why I
So
was like,
that's
wait,
the
waterless. I
chaotic
thought we were in,
waters.
yeah.
So within just two clauses from each other, we're using the metaphor of desert and the metaphor of like the deep ocean,
Mm-hmm.
which again for an ancient peoples is the most sort of chaotic, dangerous wilderness kind of places.
Yeah.
So it's really trying to get across this idea of, again, unordered chaos, um, using the metaphors that they would be familiar with. Part of that deep is also our Mesopotamian sort of creation narratives. Um, is you have like Tiamat, which is the deep. this is the chaotic sort of god of deep oceans and that sort of thing, who in that creation narrative is um, utterly destroyed by the god,
Mm.
like defeated, and creation sort of comes out of her carcass. Here, God sort of is above the deep and creates order, is definitely part of it, and yet there's also a place for the chaos,
Right. It's
right? So it's this contrast. There's the light, but it's not all light, right? There's
right.
darkness and light, and both of them sort of, um, there's a balance between them.
Right, because it doesn't, and well, and two other things like if we're looking at the desert metaphor and the
Mhm.
deep metaphor, we're looking at two complete opposites. Both are chaos without God.
Mhm.
Both are chaotic, even though they are exact opposites. Um, both lack something
Mhm.
without God. And he calls the light good, but it's not that he necessarily calls the darkness evil.
Right.
Um,
That's a good, yeah.
that we look at the night, and the night is not bad necessarily. It's different. Um, and that it does not it's not that day is good and night is bad. They're different. Now the darkness metaphor, then we get into the darkness to not overcome, and all that, and there is an element of evil in that, in darkness, but um I think what's interesting is the emphasis on this thing is good, not the emphasis on but that thing is bad.
Right.
um
There's
that
maybe an inferred sort of
right.
difference, but it's not explicit. That's
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
But
And
and throughout the whole narrative, we're going to get the and God saw this was good.
yeah,
So the more that he creates, the more that he orders, the more that he brings to life and brings into the light, that is good. And it's this emphasis on what is good, not an emphasis on what is bad.
right. Oh, it's very good. Oh, pun intended. Um, oh, what else was I going to say about that? Oh, and just to recognize that, first of all, you sort of alluded to the John 1 stuff that we'll get to later in the year, of the light came into the world,
Mhm.
and darkness did not overcome it, is very much playing on these sort of this
Yeah.
imagery from here, which is, I believe, one of the reasons why we find them in the same narrative lectionary year. Um, so just to recognize that and kind of sort of put a pin on it and recognize it.
Mhm.
Um, also to recognize that as we consider this metaphor of light and darkness, that there are have been some serious racial overtones that have been laid upon that,
Mhm.
with Eurocentric and sort of colonizing mentality, very much emphasize this idea of that light skinned white people are better than those who have darker skin, just necessarily by just the way the creation has been created. Look, see, read it in Genesis. So
Right. And that's the
yeah, just a
again
note
that
of
thing that
caution.
we have imposed upon light and dark,
Yes,
as
absolutely.
opposed to understanding what that light is not, nor should it be a color. It is
Mhm.
a thing.
Yeah,
It is
this is the concept of
the
light. Yeah,
concept of
yeah,
light. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
And of course, like I would be remiss in my Star Wars lovingness, to not recognize that this sort of light side, dark side, that this is a dichotomy that we see in lots of different
yeah.
places.
Okay, sorry, weird tangent, but
Yeah.
this is interesting to me. My son reads the Wings of Fire series, and so I read it
Yeah,
with
yeah.
him. And one of the things that he's reading the Darkstalker book now. Now, Darkstalker ends up becoming evil, but the mom, when she names him Darkstalker, is pointing out that is not, because the dad's like, oh, that's a terrible name. He's evil. He's stalking in the dark. He's hiding. And she's like, no, he's coming from the dark. He's chasing the dark away.
Oh.
He's pushing that darkness out. He is darkness, but also pushing that darkness out. Um, and that struck, in reading that in the book, struck me. And now I'm making that connection to that
Mm-hmm.
idea that darkness itself is not
Mm-hmm.
evil. Um, it's the thing that we decide to personify within
Mm-hmm.
it. So I don't know exactly how that connects, but it's just interesting. It's just an interesting thing that
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean, this is very much um a social construct that light is good and dark is evil.
yeah.
If we were, if we were to be nocturnal, it would probably be the opposite.
Yeah, because in this tribe, they're the Nightwing tribe, and so to
Right.
the mom who's a Nightwing, she's like, "There's nothing wrong with the night," and the
Right.
dad's an Icewing who lives in Ice Kingdom but lives in the day, and so necessarily he chooses that. He says that that's bad, because it's the antithesis of what he is used to.
And isn't, I mean, like, that is so much what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
Is the dark is scary, it's unknown, this chaotic, whether it's the waterless places or the too much water places, it's that unknown, it could be dangerous. So um we've got to watch out for it type thing.
yeah,
It's the um and so much of we overlook the dangers that are right in front of us.
right. I was going to say, but it's even worse when evil lives in the light.
Yeah, exactly.
That when evil is just out there in the light of day, and yet we skip over that because we can see it. It's right there.
Right, it's right there.
It can't be that bad.
Like we
We accept it.
Yeah, like we will talk about heinous murders and abuse because it's so, like, out there, and we ignore that most abuse happens in the home, things
Right.
like that, and we just
Yeah.
um
Yeah, but
cool.
the evil part is that is the antithesis of the light of God,
Mhm.
not that darkness itself is
Yeah.
evil.
Yeah, definitely. um we also have this sort of wind, spirit, breath of God, and just to recognize that in Hebrew, ruach, as well as in Greek, pneuma, that is the same word. We translate it, depending on the context, into spirit or breath or wind, but it's just the same word.
It's the same word. We just decide the context in which we use the context to decide which one of those things we're going to.
Because we have separate sort of ideas about them.
Yeah.
Whereas in a biblical context, they are the same thing.
Right.
Spirit is breath. And partially it's sort of the idea of a spirit is like pulls on the metaphor of, very much in Hebrew understanding, especially, the sort of the very breath that I breathe in order to live,
right,
is a blessing from God. It gives me that something, right? We see this in the second creation narrative where God breathes into the dirt creature and gives it life. That sort of breath is the spirit, the animating force, the, like, all of these sorts of things. So
well, and I think it's interesting to actually read that with all those different words. Like, does it change your feeling or thought or understanding that when you read it with, while a spirit from God, or while a well, the breath from God. Like, how does that change your feeling for when you read it? And that's an interesting
Yeah.
exercise to do.
And also, but even just taking the sort of metaphors on their face, what does wind look like flowing over chaotic
Mm-hmm.
waters and over waterless lands? It has a little bit more of a uh yeah,
Wind is more forceful than breath.
yeah, yeah, which is kind of an interesting thing. So God makes the light, and we have this again, like we said, contrast light and darkness, night, day,
Dichotomies.
dichotomy. Yeah. Anything else about that section?
No, this is probably though a good time to mention that if you're looking for short, brief context, we're not your people.
Right. This is long form podcasts. It'll be fun. All right.
It's you.
So section 2 is Genesis 1, 6 to 8, the waters, or we can come up with maybe something more interesting than that. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome, and it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening and there was morning the second day, which is a very interesting sort of word picture, assuming you have an ancient idea of cosmology, of the way the world exists. Um, it makes no sense, really, if you think about it with our current cosmology. So our current cosmology, obviously, like you've got the sun, and the Earth rotates around the sun, the moon rotates around that. There are stars that are very, very, very distant. Um, Water stays on the planet because of gravity, and there's a shield of atmosphere around, also held in by gravity. Um, and in ancient cosmology, they would have no idea what you were talking about. Broadly speaking, ancient cosmology is the world is a flat surface plane, right? There's some idea about, you might get to the edge of where that world is. There are some ideas from various cultures about what is underneath that, whether it's turtles all the way down, perhaps. It's on the back of a sea turtle or whatever. Um, and in that on that plane, you have water and land and whatever it is. Um, because that's the way it looks. When you look to, there is a horizon, there is a place in which the land no longer you can see it. And so, it goes that far. And then above you, it looks like there is a dome, right? It's this sort of like big bubble that is over you. And so there was an expectation that that's exactly the way the world is. Um, there were multiple domes in that cosmology. So you have the dome of the sky, which is what you can see most of the time. And then above that, you have the heavens, right? There are multiples of them. You've got the dome of the sky. You've got the dome of the stars. I think sun and moon are another dome, and then stars are above that. And beyond that is, that's where the gods are. And yeah, oftentimes the stars were seen to be, we'll get to them in a little bit, but they're the gods, or maybe the ancestors, or maybe they're the same thing. Windows that they can look down upon the earth. Um, all of these sorts of things, right? So this idea of sort of like we're in this on this plane, and then there's this dome above, and that's exactly what's being described here. God, there was water there, and then there's water up there, and great.
Spaceballs.
Spaceballs. Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Open the little glass thing. And
Yeah. 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 There you go. Yeah.
yeah,
That's what it is. Yeah. Um, though there is, as I was doing the sort of modern cosmology, there's a little bit of a sort of dome of the waters, and then there's a dome
we
of the
have
sky.
atmosphere. We
Yeah.
have like
Yeah.
we still have some of that with the atmosphere and well, with our atmosphere and going out of our atmosphere. There's still not a literal glass dome, but there is still a dome around us.
Yeah.
I think it's the picture before that that is interesting. Just the waters just existing everywhere as opposed to a swirling ball. We basically got just water, and
Yeah.
so then we into a ball that's then with the dome around it.
Though I read a book. There are some who have noted a similarity between this description of creation and our modern understanding of like universal cosmology, that there was, like sort of the Big Bang sort of situation.
Right, that's what I was
and
gonna say.
then
This really is a
right,
very poetic
there's
way to
just
describe the Big Bang of
stuff.
stuff swirling and then coming together and creating.
Yeah. So yeah, so there are some who suggest that this is like the traditional story from where this story comes from is this is part of what God is saying to Moses on the mountain. And so kind of the story of this is God shows Moses like this is how the creation of everything happened. And he was like, like here's the Big Bang, and Moses was like, and God said there was light. Okay, cool. Like just sort of trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
But
again, like it's getting to the important part, which is that God created.
Yeah.
God chose to create. And God chose to create and call his creations good.
And a creation of the stuff that you see.
Yeah.
And when you see what looks like a giant dome above your head, and you see a land that continues on until it doesn't, God made that, right?
Yeah. Well, and trying to explain it in any other way would not have been useful.
Right. No.
Like if Moses had come down and said, "So guys, God showed me how the world was created, and it's a big circle. First of all, it's like a big spears thing. It's like a ball, and there's then there's a molten core in the middle of it, and it just that it would not be useful."
No.
All right. Section 3.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're in Genesis 1:9-13. Land ho. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seeds and fruits, trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning on the third day. It never struck me that we're looking at days backwards here.
Mm-hmm.
But the day cycle starts in the evening, includes the night,
Uh-huh.
and into the morning.
Yeah. Because it's a Hebrew conception of night and day.
Right.
And we're just assuming it's day and night.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Good thing to notice.
Just an interesting
So God is here creating not only the lands, right, but also sort of drawn along with it is creation of plants and trees and vegetation. That's sort of an assumed part of the land, which is an interesting thing, because that's not necessarily the um, typology that we would use, right? But again, in an ancient mindset, that makes sense. Plants are not something that have a breath of life, so they sort of fit in this category. It also is, again, we've got a reminder that this story is different to the one that we have in Genesis 2 and 3, where there are no plants and God's going to plant a garden.
Right.
Things like that. So that's interesting.
We're also separating plants and vegetation,
mm-hmm.
as we were trying to classify the other day.
Right.
Also, just as a footnote, there are currently 5 oceans as of 2025.
Oh, okay, there you go.
In case you're wondering, because that's not what we grew up with.
7 seas, right?
Yeah, or more. Now there's only 5.
Kind
of like we demoted Pluto. We joined some oceans.
Categorize Pluto, but we don't need to get them. So this also brings up, I have it later, but we should actually talk about it here. This sort of container theory, or it's not really a theory, but just sort of an interpretation of what's going on in this story. Partially as a memory tool presented by the author to say there are 2 groups of 3 things in this creation, and then a 7th day. So you've got light, darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got oceans, or waters below and waters above, and now you have land and plants. The next ones we're going to have is now we're going to populate this cosmic realm. We'll make stars and sun and moon. And then on the 5th day, we'll populate those waters below and those waters above with fish and birds. And then on the 6th day, it's going to be populating this land. So sort of 2 sets of 3, rather than sort of it being random or another kind of order. It's a very clear sort of like, well, there's this container, there's this container, there's this container, there's this life that fits in that, this life that fits in it, this life that fits in it. So just kind of an interesting way to create it, and again, as a storyteller telling this,
right?
It's an easy way to remember what this looks like.
Each day there's 2 things I got to know.
Right.
It's a tool, but for those of us that like organization.
Exactly. And back to that idea of the sort of poetic and the repetition and that sort of thing. It's again, it's very poetic. It's very repetitive. So kind of interesting. Is it me?
I think it's you.
Okay.
Yep.
So section 4, or day 4, Genesis 1:14-19, the heavens declare. And God said, let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth. And it was so. God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 4th day.
Um, there's never truly darkness because we have the moon, because we have
These stars.
the stars, because we always have the light. Whether it is the greater light that we can see, that we can feel, that we have the sun, or it's the lesser light of the moon that is sometimes harder to see, harder to grasp, harder to remember that it's there. But that no matter what, the light is always there, even in the darkness.
Mm.
Um, and I just think that that is again like a beautiful metaphor for our life and for the different stages that we go through. Sometimes it is really easy to focus on our faith and really easy to feel God's presence and God's light on us. And then there's other times where it's really hard to feel that. It's cold. It doesn't, things are dimly illuminated. It's hard to see where we're supposed to be going. But that even in that dimness, there is the light. The light is always there. The light never leaves us. God never puts us in a place of true darkness. That his creation always has light. His creation can always see. His creation can always um, find its way to him, to God. I'm not sure that that's what's getting at here, but like that's that idea as when
No,
we
it's a good.
we started at the beginning with the light and the dark. That but in actuality, there is no dark. There is not true darkness, not in this now that God has created the greater light and the lesser light. There is not true darkness.
Yeah.
And it was good.
Mm-hmm. And I think back to that sort of just the light dark dichotomy. Um, we look at that and assume that the creation of the light is the good thing, but it's the both, and we see that very clearly here. Creation of the greater light and the lesser light and the stars, that's good, right? Yeah, it's that there's that they're both.
Let this be a sign for seasons and for the days and the years, and that again, I just see that as like such a a metaphor for the different seasons of our lives, the different times in our lives, and that it is all truly good, even though it is hard, even though the darkness can be difficult to walk through. Again, it's never truly dark, and those times are still good. That walking in that time of night is still good because God is still there with us.
And the signs for seasons and days and years is also, again, a very practical, this is what you see. Ancient peoples would have been far more familiar with, well, first of all, they could see the night sky incredibly much more than we can, between pollution of light and pollution of air. But that they would live their lives based on what's going on up there. They would be very much more aware of it. We recently heard about Native peoples using, it was the Southern Cross, and when the first star disappeared behind the horizon, you knew that it was time to plant, of the three sisters, you would plant the corn. And then when the next one went, well, then you plant the beans, I think is next. And then when the final one, that's when you plant the squash. So it was this perfect timing of, this is when you plant, this is when you don't. That the Hebrew calendar is based completely on the new moon. So when the moon is completely blacked out, that's the beginning of this new month. That's the way you live your life and sort of figure out what do you do. We're now in the feast of the month of this. On the 7th month, there's special celebrations and all of these sorts of, all of those sort of yearly things are all not based on the sun. It's all based on the moon. It's a lunar calendar. but that, position of stars and all of those sorts of things, finding your direction based on those. Um, yeah, that all of that again is this beautifully created, um, with design and purpose, and there's a reason for it.
And again, it's order.
Mm-hmm.
It's
There's order.
Yeah.
And even the sun being the source of light in the day, there's this one place from which the light comes. Um, it's a funny story or a funny question to ask on day one. Well, God created light, but where is the light coming from? And it seems to be just light. And I can imagine the storyteller saying, "Shut up, kid!" Like that.
We're gonna get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to it. But then there's this order, this place from which the greater light comes, as well.
Section 5, Genesis 1, 20 to 23, Sky Things and Water Things. Great title.
Yeah. It's the best I could.
And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the 5th day.
Yeah. So now we're populating the waters below and the waters above. Some things I think that it's interesting to note is, swarm that's an interesting sort of choice, right?
Yeah.
It's the things that there's lots of little things, a school of fish, a flock of birds, which in many ways act very similarly. They swarm, or swarms of bees or whatever.
Yeah, we tend to go swarms as negative things.
Yeah, right. But again, it's one of the things that is there. And then we have God creates the great sea monsters of every living creature that moves. And this again is an intentional and more close to the original sort of translation, because for ancient peoples, absolutely there are, like, we know that there are sea creatures out there. We've heard all sorts of stories about them. There is Tiamat. There is the what's the other one? Behemoth, right? There are these dragon creatures that are out there. And you know what? And again, this sort of contrast, those are not the things to be deeply feared. Those things our God created in the first place.
Yeah.
Elohim made even that thing that you think is huge and really scary.
But also sharks are scary.
Also sharks are scary, but you know what? God also made sharks.
I know.
God made Megalodon. Sorry.
Trigger warning. Thank you.
So yeah, so I think that's interesting.
Yeah. That's gonna there's not much else to say about that.
We also, this is the first day where there is a mandate to be fruitful and multiply, right? This was not given to plants, because plants are a whole different thing in an ancient mindset. This is not given to the sun and the moons and the stars, because, for my whole generation, for the stars that my grandparents taught to me are the same stars that are up there. They are fixed. They are the same. But birds and fish, they make more birds and fish. So there's this: be fruitful and multiply, fill the waters and the seas, let the birds multiply on the earth. And there's evening and then there's morning. so this sort of call to mandate to multiply, continue, fill, create more. And in that, they're asked to participate in this creative process, which is kind of interesting. But it's also an interesting sort of contrast of this creation narrative is it is a creation of abundance, right? This is not the creation of, well, here are two fish, get to populating the oceans. It's like there are swarms of these things. There's huge creatures. There's all of these birds. It's like it's all of this stuff God creates, and it's just like this abundance and all of this greatness. And you know what? Make more. Keep making them.
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
And that animal, that these were created first. And that the dominion of the sky and the waters was given to them in order to create and multiply and be fruitful and multiply. And that again, God chose to create the sea creatures and the birds first, before man, before and so what duty do we have to honor that is their that is their place.
And that is another sort of major sort of theme of this creation is those sort of dominions, right?
Yeah.
We saw that with you know, the greater light has dominion over, it rules over the day, and the lesser light rules over the night. That the sea creatures are to rule over, to fill and multiply in the waters and the seas. I don't think it's dominion specifically.
No, that's that word was just what was coming to me.
But yeah, but there is an implied sort of like this is their place, right? You go into the chaotic oceans. Part of the danger is that you're on their turf.
Yeah.
Like there are things that might I'm not going to trigger you again. So you go, like you go flying in the sky. Like that's inherently dangerous because there might be things that's their turf that you're that you're on. So that's another interesting thing. All right, ready to go to the next one?
Yep.
Section 6, Genesis 1:24-25. What to eat or want to eat, don't want to eat, wants to eat you. This is my typology. So God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things and wild animals of the earth of every kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. And this is I would say, a priestly ordering typology of these land animals, right? There are cattle, domesticated animals, animals that are clean, ones that you can sacrifice, right? There's also the creepy kinds of animals, those things that are weird, they're vermin, they're bugs, they're things that you would not want to eat because they're unclean. And then there are the wild animals. Those are the things that they might want to eat you. All the kinds of animals that there are, right? We have different typologies. We have, mammal and bird and reptile or whatever. That's not what they're worried about. They're worried about if they're clean, unclean, or dangerous, right? But all of them are created by God here.
Yeah. And again, all of it was good.
Yeah.
That there is no inherent, we're the kids and I were talking about this animal or that animal not having any purpose or but the truth is all of it is good. All of it was created for a reason. And while I don't like sharks, there's a reason for them. While I don't like mosquitoes, there is a reason. that everything serves a purpose, and God created all of it, and it was all good. Um, it's also just interesting that verse 24 and verse 25 are basically saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And same with the one about 20
yeah,
and 21.
yeah.
Like, it's just that God's
Again,
telling us what he's going to do
repetition,
and then does it.
And
Yeah.
and again, from a standpoint of I'm telling the story and I want you to remember it, then that repetition
Yeah.
as an oral event, you get it. Maybe you kind of spaced out the first verse, but now you hear it again or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, what was I gonna say? Oh, and it's also this sort of listing of the kinds of animals. Also, sort of, it implies that um, there's a food chain, there's a biome situation. There are some animals that are that's what they do, is they eat other animals.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some animals that eat the grass, and there are some animals that like clean up after them. This sort of like system that is created is assumed
circle
here.
Of life.
And just to partially to recognize that, so the Genesis 2 continued has this sort of idea of that's not the case before, and then in the fallen world, and then eventually, I don't remember when it was, there's a point at which the humans now get to eat the animals. But here it's sort of implied that no, it's just all stuff eats each other, and that's just, it's part of how life works.
That's what we do.
Yeah. But even in then, that the order of that there is a particular food chain, that bug gets eaten by the lizard, which gets eaten by the cat, which gets eaten by the that there's this, they all feed each other, and there's this process, and then the lion dies and becomes food for the plants to grow, and it's all this biome sort of situation.
All right, section 7. Genesis 1, 26 to 27, image of God. Then God said, "Let us make humans in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humans in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them.
All right. So lots of stuff here. God creating humans in our image, in our likeness. So there's lots of ways that can be viewed, and I think all of them, or a lot of them, are very interesting lenses through which to see it. There's the sort of like the namaste sort of thing. The divine in me recognizes the divine in you, right? There is this divine spark, the image of God. There's that creativity that we are called to be a part of, God's creative work, and the ways that humans create are different than the ways that animals create. Animals are called to create more of themselves, whereas humans create not only more of ourselves but also communities. We create, we order the world and create a garden or a field or a house or that sort of thing. So there's that. There is very much, I think, a part of this is this idea of an image being the same word as idol, right? It is an image of this God. So there's a really interesting thing going on here in this creation narrative where in all of these cultures in which they live, humans make an image of the god where you can bow down to this god. It presences the divine
Mm-hmm.
to you. You can access, you can talk to, you can sacrifice to this god through this thing that has been created. What is being said here is that humanity itself is the divine image of God, right? If you want to see who God is, if you want to connect with God, there is something about in connection between people that does that. If you want to presence the God, it's through human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also there's that, right? That we are almost the idol of God, right? We are the thing that stands in for and presences the divine, which is really, again, this is a pretty this is a wild thing to say in the ancient world. And sort of the again scandal of it being there were human beings that in the ancient world were seen to be images of God, and those were kings. Those were the mighty men. Those were the people who killed the most other people
Mm-hmm.
and accrued power to themselves and said that they were the voice of the god, right? I am the image of Baal. I am the image of Ra. I am the image of whatever. Do whatever I say. Right. Because it's that one person. This idea of humanity is that not only do we as human beings contain the divine image in ourselves, but all human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about, the king that can build the highest ziggurat. It's that person that is on the side of the road who is starving.
Right.
Also bears the image of the living God. And that's really almost overwhelming,
Yeah.
right? I would when I taught this for middle schoolers, I said, there's no one that you have ever met or ever will meet that is not made in the image of God. No matter what you think about them, no matter how they look, no matter how different they are from you, they are created in the image of God. If we really took Imago Dei seriously, like it would change the way we live.
Right.
It should.
But if we really did, it would change the way we lived.
Exactly.
That
Yeah.
is too hard.
And that's a really scary thing for
Yeah.
the king on the tallest ziggurat, right? The idea that every person bears the image of God.
Yeah.
So sorry, I said a lot of things.
No. I mean, I think the other thing that's important to point out here is that he created them male and female.
Mm-hmm.
That this is not a hierarchy. That this is not a
Mm-hmm.
that males do not have more of the
Mm-hmm.
divine.
Yep.
In the next in the other story, we'll get into the rib and all of that stuff, but which we don't have this
right.
time. But
next year we'll talk
right.
about.
But that this is even that this is that both men and women are created in the image of God, and with that image of God in them, that God spark, that
it's a very egalitarian sort of,
and we often skip over this and go straight to,
Yeah.
the parts that we like,
Mhm.
not that I like, but that,
Yeah.
as the patriarchy,
That,
um,
yeah.
we ignore the bits that don't fit our narrative,
Mhm.
um, in order to find the bits that do, instead of trying to make all of the bits make sense together. Um, and I think when you look at this creation, and then if you look at, putting Adam to sleep, and when we look at that word as half or side
Mhm.
instead of rib, that we can again see that that is an egalitarian
Mhm.
split. And then if we look at when they're kicked out of the garden and that justification for women having to be subjugated, again, if we look at that as, but that was the fall, and that the
Mhm.
restoration is again back to this egalitarian idea of both
Yeah.
men and women. And so if we look at it that way, then all those parts make sense and fit
Mhm.
together. But we don't like that because that
Mhm.
loses, or the patriarchy doesn't like that because that loses power for them. And so we just sort of skate over this idea, um, that men and women are both, or male and female. Um, and, you know, and then where do we fit in on binary into this? Because again, that is
Yeah. I was
something
just
we
about to
both,
say that.
um, validate and think
Yeah.
is important.
Well, and I think
And
it's
so,
important
yeah,
to recognize that there is a gender binary that we are reading into this, which
right.
is not necessarily intended. First of all, that idea of a gender binary is not that old. It's a relatively recent idea of this very clear dichotomy between, with nothing that doesn't fit into it or is in between or anything like that. Most ancient sort of gender understandings were not so rigid.
Right.
And part of that we can see by this repeated poetic sort of language, that there was night and there was day, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't mean there wasn't twilight
Right.
or
Or
late
dusk or
afternoon or
dawn, or
dusk, or
yeah.
yeah, right. That there, the way, part of this Hebrew construction is to say these two things,
But
but
also all the
everything
things
in
in
between
between.
is assumed.
Yeah.
Um, there's been some research that the Talmud, which is rabbinic reflections um, on the Hebrew scriptures, within that there are 8 clear genders. That it's very much not binary, recognizing that there are, those who don't fit that binary. There are those who, sort of transcend them. That it just doesn't always line up the way that you. It doesn't. It's not that there's just 2 boxes and that's it,
Yeah.
right? Um, that is something that we impose upon this because, again, it lines up with a particular worldview that insists on a very strict gender binary. um, but that's not what's intended here at all. um, the ancient people were very much aware that there were people who were what we would call non-binary. There have always been people that we would now call transgender. There have always been people who were just did not fit the sort of binary, sort of like, I mean, clearly there's a poll. There's sort of like majority tend to sift into these two, but recognition that there are all of this variety of other ways of being.
Spectrum.
And they really didn't, they didn't care as much as
Yeah.
we do in the last 100 years.
And that, if we're looking at this from an ordered standpoint, that spectrum is no less orderly,
Mhm.
no less, um, that doesn't make that having that spectrum is not chaotic. It just it is, and it
Yeah.
fits in God's order.
Mhm. Yeah. And in fact, if there is chaos, it is artificially forcing every single person
Into these two
into
things.
this, into
Yeah.
two boxes that only exist. I've been watching on Instagram, and I'm sure she started on TikTok, or they did. These bits of Mr. Banana. Have you seen any of these? And Mr. Banana says there are only apples and bananas. That is it. And then Encounter's like, "Oh, I'm a strawberry. Like I a strawberry. I don't know this word. Are you an apple? You know, it's just to show the ridiculousness of like not everybody fits in these two
categories.
things.
Yeah.
Um, and how beautiful and how wonderful humanity is that we don't fit into any binary, right? And when we try to fit people in very specific boxes, um, we do violence and we lose so much beauty.
Yeah.
Whereas when we look at ancient cultures who oftentimes very much have a reverence for people, they go, okay, sure, yeah, they're male people and there are female people, and then there are these other people who don't fit, and they're predominantly assumed to be have some sort of special connection to spirit. They have wisdom that we cannot understand if we're just male or we're just female. Um, you know, there's an ability to sort of transcend that, and this reverence for people who don't fit that binary, which is
Yeah.
and Hebrew culture is not immune from that. Um, as we go on, we are not going to go. I don't think we're super gender bendy this thing, but there's lots of stuff. There's Joseph and the pretty princess dress. There's Jacob, his father, who didn't like to be out with in the woods, wanted to hang out in the tents with the women. You know, like there's very much some sort of and ancient conversation about how they did not that Jacob
Right.
and
Well, they did
Joseph
not fit.
particularly did not fit into sort of a strict binary.
Yeah. Well, when we look at King David, like David
Yeah.
was not the strong one. He was not the handsome one. He was not the well muscled. Like he, did not fit that picture, that stereotype, that ideal.
And had a very special friendship with Jonathan.
Yeah.
Who he loved more than the love of women. So,
yeah,
yeah.
You put two and two together.
Exactly. And that's where that sort of a queer reading of this can sort of recognize where we have been, stuck in a gender binary, where we've been stuck in heteropatriarchy and all
why?
of these, and why exactly?
Because it is much easier to subjugate one binary to another binary than it is to subjugate an entire spectrum to one binary. So by saying there's male and female are definitely the weaker species that are definitely subjugated to men, that's a lot easier to deal with than to recognize that there is this spectrum and that all have value and that and that there is no subjugation and that we are all equal. That doesn't work for for what you're trying to do there.
Right. Well, and it has been used as this sort of divide and conquer sort of situation of like, well, if men are the only ones that matter, then we just have to persuade them. Who cares about those other ones?
Yeah.
Because they don't vote. They don't get a say in anything. So like, you're cutting out over half of the population because that's another way that it's easier to subjugate, because then
Yeah.
you're just subjugating these ones who are frankly not the brightest ones.
The ones doing the subjugation, not the subjugated.
No. The men that they have to
Yeah.
that like, oh, we have to put you under. They're not always the ones that are the smartest, and the ones who will fight back and recognize, fight for life and all of these sorts of things. So you put the actually like emotionally stronger ones, the women and non-binary and folks who don't fit in that, if you put them all under the men who are not always emotionally intelligent,
Right.
in fact usually are not, they just tend to be physically stronger, then yeah, it makes it easier type thing. Yeah. Let's see.
It's you.
Oh, I'm just looking at also just to note, let us make a couple ways of seeing that plurality is probably this is sort of assuming a divine council sort of idea of God, Elohim, the high God above these other divine beings, which is very much sort of a pre-biblical or pre-Second Temple understanding of things, and this would include the gods of all the other nations type thing. But of course, as Christians, we can also give this a triune reading, that there's something going on there, that the us is the God who is three and also one, or one and three. Oh, and we haven't even talked about dominion. That's a loaded word.
Yeah.
Right? This idea of dominion has become this sort of like, it goes to that subjugation sort of thing. And that is a part of it, but part of it is also this create order in it.
Right.
Right? Going back to this idea of God who creates order out of chaos. Take this world that is chaotic. It is the waterless places. Build a house, build a garden, build a field, make order out of the things that are not ordered. That doesn't mean that yes, you do sort of impose your will upon it, but not in a way that's sort of like you get to do whatever you want.
Yeah, you're supposed to take care of.
Yeah, it's a care of. And especially if we pair it then with, and we've been talking a lot about the contrast between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. But if we recognize that these have been given to us sort of as parallel, you have this idea of dominion, but then you very quickly also have the idea of care for and nurture.
Yeah.
And that it's both of these together. Create order out of it, make it into something, but also care for it and nurture it and watch for it.
Well, and if we are created in the image of God, then we should be caring for these things as God would care for them.
Yeah.
Not as they would serve us.
Yes.
And yeah, that we would be taking care of them as God's representatives on earth, not as God's police force.
Right.
Right.
Police. Yeah.
I don't know what the right word is there, but like, yeah.
Well, yeah, and this is where these sort of ideas of subjugation and colonization and just using up all of the resources and who cares what happens after you, this extractive capitalism, all of these sorts of things are a bastardization of this sort of idea of dominion.
Yeah. Well, and again, like I said, animals and birds and they were all created first.
Yep.
And then God sent his representatives, his
Mhm.
image, to take care of, not rule over, I think.
And again, with an ancient and specifically Hebrew mindset, the first things listed tend to be more important. And so there is a humility to the ordering here. Or as John Dominic Crossan says, that that humanity is not the first thing to be created. The humanity is a late Friday afternoon job, and you do not do your best work on a late Friday afternoon, right? You're like, okay, I just got to get this done.
I gotta get it out. Mistakes for me.
Mistakes for me.
Can I help you?
Cool. Who is it?
It's even, so it's you.
Oh yeah, that's right. So God, Genesis 1:28-31. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree that with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that God had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So similar mandates is given to humanity: be fruitful and multiply. But then there's also this sort of subdue and have dominion. And this is very much in line with this theme that we see throughout Scripture, and especially in Genesis. It's very important in Genesis that the fact that the humans are made the very last and then given sort of dominion over everything is very intentional. It's not because they deserve it, because again,
Right.
the birds and the fish and everything else was created first. They're given dominion because they're the least, they're the lesser, they're the last to be made, they're the least important, or we're the last to be made, we're the least important. Just like, Joseph, the last of the sons, who everybody hated, who was kind of queer, he's the one who is actually the image of God, and displays that. The Jacob, who's a trickster and a punk, as we said last week, who's the second born, he's the one who gets the divine blessing, right? There's this sort of constantly, and David is another great example, that the one who is chosen not because they're the biggest and the strongest and the first and all of the cultural assumptions that go with who gets born first. This is the least.
Well, it's that idea of the servant too, that
yeah.
we are created to serve creation,
Mm-hmm.
not to make creation serve us.
Yeah.
And that we use it, but we use it for specific purposes and specific reasons and in specific ways, and to be good stewards of it and to take care of the things that God created that were good. It was very good.
Yeah, and the very good comes here in this now sort of completeness of the creation.
Yeah.
And this has been taken as God is specifically describing, oh, humans are here now. That's very good. But it seems like it's more the totality.
Yeah.
It's all of this stuff has been created. Everything has been good so far. Now in its fullness, it's very good.
Sorry, dog. Okay.
Um,
Section 9, Genesis 2 1 to 4a. Rest. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitudes. On the sixth day, God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work he had done in creation. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created.
the
The
yeah. So seventh day rest. And this is very, again, if we didn't recognize the fingerprints of the priests before, we definitely do now. Sabbath, it's a day of rest. God has done all the work. Even God rests on the seventh day, which in our calendar would be Saturday, Sabbath. And this granting of order is also, it includes everything that we see, but it also includes time itself. That time is to be ordered in this way, where there are times for work and doing all these things. There's also time for rest. As we look in throughout Torah, the sort of explanation throughout there, this idea of seven is, and paired with rest, is really important. Where you look at the holiday schedule, the Hebrew holiday schedule, and it's like, that after the 2 sevens, and then you have Passover, and then for 7 days you refrain from eating leaven, and then I think there's some sort of connection to seven to then Shavuot, and then on the seventh month you have the Day of Atonement, and then that there's another 7 day festival and a 7 all of these sorts of different things, that it's all connected, and then every 7 years there's a Sabbath year that you lay everything
fallow.
Yeah, you lay fallow. And then every 7 of those sevens there's a year of jubilee, and all of the debts go away, and all, this is really important to Torah. Not always lived out, and some of those things not actually lived out at all ever, but this is sort of the images that is being created of this sort of that rest is important, that everyone is included in that rest, that there is enough. All of these sort of things are tied up in this.
Yeah. I think that everything that everyone is included is a key there. Like, just in my own life, whenever I'm calling breaks, I'm like, everybody is on a break right
Yeah, right.
Even the stage managers get to take a rest. No, I'm not going to go get that for you right now because I am also on a break.
Yeah.
I am also incredibly terrible at taking rest, so I don't have a lot to say about this particular section.
And to note that this can be one of those things that can be very draconian. So we lived in a small town, and I heard scuttlebutt around that I was gardening on Sunday, right? Which is anathema. It's a terrible thing because of blue laws, and sort of like, oh, everybody has to rest, and that means a very specific thing. But for me, who most of the week spends, writing and reading and studying and doing all of these other things, fairly cerebral things, just getting my hands dirty on a Sunday afternoon was like, that was perfect. That was a great thing to sort of like enjoy God's creation.
But you were doing it wrong.
But I was doing it wrong, right? But that
Yeah.
there is something to there's I think Reformed Jewish take on Sabbath is, so the Orthodox Jewish people is sort of nth degree, we're gonna not, you can't turn on a light switch, so you have to leave all the lights on. You can you can't cook anything, so you eat leftovers type thing. In the Reformed Jewish tradition, it's more about, especially in our culture, don't do something that's going to lead to something else, right? Don't read that book that is going to, give you a new skill to do something else, to learn a new language, to, don't do stuff but do stuff that's just fun. Like, just do something that is, maybe it's frivolous. It doesn't have to lead to something else. It's not about, again, developing a new skill. It's just being and spending time with other people. It's not, so it's less restrictive, but it's more like change your frame of mind a little bit. You don't have to gig all the time. Walter Brueggemann, of blessed memory, wrote a book called Sabbath as Resistance. The sort of idea that in an extractive capitalistic society, that constantly drives to, like, of course you're going to be open on Sunday. Of course, commerce cannot stop. Part of what Sabbath is to claim and say, you know what? I don't have to work today and I'm going to be okay. I don't have to be constantly striving and it's going to be okay. Part of that is that it's sort of like tied up in the story of the manna of, don't collect that day and there's still going to be enough. It's a reminder of that sort of enoughness, the abundance mindset. Sorry, that was a sermon. Other thoughts?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we'll finish up with our last section. That'll preach. We don't have to do this in a particular order.
I mean, I'm not so much doing preaching anymore.
Yeah.
So, I'll be very much just going through these days with the kids, sort of one at a time. But I think for me, actually, it'll be more interesting to hear what the kids are getting from it. I think, we'll probably be looking at this very straightforward. But maybe bring out more of the poetic language. And I think we'll probably get into caring for God's creation. Probably that'll probably be the thing that we and equality. I think those are probably the two things I'm going to focus on. And as far as like Bible builds goes, I have recently ended up having around 7 kids, so I'll probably, so I'm thinking I'll do each, and let them just do a sort of pick from the hat which day you get, and see what they end up creating, because that'll
be fun,
interesting, especially for some of those earlier ones. So yeah, I think that's what we'll but I think we'll focus on creation as our call to take care of creation and how this narrative fits in with that.
I think for me, the strongest sort of theme here is that order and chaos. That I really liked what you said, that the sort of describing of the light as good does not necessarily mean that the dark is bad. And maybe even it could be both of them, that now that there is both, now it's good. When it was just one, that was a problem, but now it's both. And how that sort of creating order is part of the way that we participate in the image of God, that we live out that image of God. That, and the image of God stuff, I think, is really also important. That everyone that we meet is made in the image of God. And what does that mean for us? What does that mean for the way we live? When we create, how do we build community? How do we connect to one another? How are we informed by this sort of interpretive lens that we are all made in the image of God, breathed into, it's not here, but still, given that image of God, created in God's image, and then called to create, called to participate in creating order out of disorder, out of the chaos that sometimes we're the ones who are also creating. How do we make that? How do we build that? How do we stay away from those hierarchical sort of assumptions that we've been given, that binary that we've been given? How do we see the beauty in in that sort of order that is more chaotic than maybe we want it to be, right? That God sees all of this, and it is, there's all sorts of different kinds of creatures, and there's all sorts of different things going on, and it's not as pretty a picture as, say, the Garden of Eden, but it's still very good. It's still all of this sort of the dichotomy, and all of the interactions are still good. Yeah, something like that. Lots of stuff. And maybe because this is the first time I'm preaching this one, I may go through that sort of, what is the flow? How does that make sense, and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's maybe what I'll do. This is the problem with doing this so early, is I'm not sure what
we have to listen to it again before that week, and then,
exactly.
Spark something. Yeah,
there you go. So thanks for joining us for Tales of Faith, and we'll see you next week for I don't know what it is.
My computer died.
I believe it's the Abraham. I don't remember which Abraham story it is, so I apologize. But join us next week. We'll be talking about it. So,
whatever it is, we'll be reading it.
Absolutely. And we might not take an hour and a half to talk about that one, but
But we probably will.
So, thanks for joining us. Bye.